This show is brought to you by our friends at bayphoto.com. Head over after the show to print something amazing. Be sure to check out their specials at bayphoto.com/specials.
Okay, with that, let's dive into our critiques. So, Jared, what have we got here? Here's the first one. Who is this from?
All right, this one's from Michael, and this was taken with an iPhone 13 Pro using the ultra wide lens, and he titled it "Look Up."
I want to just note Jennifer said creative gap. Oh, yeah, I know that. Yeah, we all know that, right? And how do you get out of the creative gap? You persist, but you also learn. You learn from your mistakes and you come back and you go, okay, that didn't work. What can we do? I like this shot a lot. I mean, it's got geometry in it, which is, really a great composition tool. You'll read about it in my book. And it's got a lot of different interests in terms of what we're looking at. It's a interesting set of geometric shapes. You've got the spheres of the lights, but really it's the ceiling. And that, to me, this would fit into a series of photographs. It could be standalone, but I would think it would more serve as part of a series. In other words, you're taking, I don't know, maybe some kind of little documentary of this building and people in it, and this is one of the images within it. So good. It definitely works. Good one. And I might tell you another thing from George in a minute, but let's just stick with the persistence one for a minute and see if we can find some examples of where persistence paid off.
Here's a very interesting one. So this is a series.
These.
Yeah, so this is the Project Euphoria, explores the relationship between music and human emotions, and I thought we'd take a look at a few of these just because I couldn't pick one, but I really dig this.
Yeah, these are cool. I do too. Wow. See, you know what I like about this is innovative. This is something we haven't seen before. That one really, go back to that one. That's the one that to me really stands out because you've got different things going on, but you've got a gesture and we've got a definite center of interest here with the guy. And that's the one that resonates the most with me. Go through the other ones just again. Let me see. There's some gesturing and whatnot. Yeah, go ahead. That one, see, I don't see the gesture there. I don't see. This is kind of interesting as a design, but I don't have a center of interest, so I kind of lose it. But go back to that first one. Yeah, first one to me is the one that really pulls my eye because we're looking at the subject and his expression is, right there in the center. But all this blurriness stuff going on around him adds a really interesting layer. So bravo, well done on these. I will give you anybody bonus points for innovation. Let's take a look at George Lucas. They had to innovate every single thing. One thing that they did that was very different than any other special effects up to that time is very simple, but very hard to, the idea is simple, but very hard to implement. And that is that all special effects up to that point, the camera was stationary and they had the objects moving around. Now, that makes it kind of look fake because if you think about it, if you're out in space and you're in another ship, what are you going to be doing? You're going to be moving while the objects are moving. That's going to add realism to it. So that was the first time they had the camera move and the objects, and that added untold amounts of equipment stuff that they had to figure out. The equipment did not exist for that. So here's an example of that. There's motion. And that's another thing George Lucas said. Films are kinetic. Kinetic means motion, in motion. Films are kinetic. And that's why Star Wars has so much kinetic energy to it. it's not about, sitting down with Luke Skywalker looking stationary inside the cockpit. It's motion, all this motion. And he pointed out the very first films were about motion. The very first film that was ever made in near my town here, near where I live in Palo Alto, California, by Moybrick, was a horse running along, and they had 24 different cameras, which gave them 24 frames per second. Very first. So this is almost like a motion picture here. So bravo. Okay. You're getting more George Lucas stories here. All right. He's a guy I want to meet. I have him on my list of people to interview.
Oh, that would be really amazing.
Not easy to finagle that, but I'm hopeful, and I will persist. I have already asked. Getting through his layers of people is the first. That's usually the challenge with any of these big names. Okay.
All right. Our next one here. This is from our good friend Susie, friend of the show, Susie. And let me find wandering the country roads in Athens, Ohio with my camera, looking for something that would surprise me.
I like that a lot. I like it. I love the VW. I'm a fan. I used to drive a VW Bug just like that. No, it was a soft top. Across the Golden Gate Bridge to the San Francisco Art Institute, where I was studying photography. When I wasn't hitchhiking, days that I didn't have access to that VW Bug, I had to hitchhike. Yes, I grew up in the 60s. Okay, this is cool. The bug is the focal point here. It is a punctuation point. It's kind of a big one, but it really is. Otherwise, there wouldn't be anything to see. There wouldn't be anything going on. But the rows of, how is that? It's just a hillside that's plowed up like that? I don't know. But anyway, that adds an interesting texture, a lot of texture in this, and lines and geometry. But that bug popping out of the ground, like, wow, that's really cool. I love it. That's a good one. It's a keeper. You might, the green is interesting. All that green does add interest. I'm just speculating what that would look like as a black and white, but I think you're better leaving it the way it is, because black and white would tend to just get lost. See, I can visualize. Do you guys do that, by the way? Do you visualize what it could look like in black and white or color? That's an important thing to, as a black and white photographer, we kind of had to develop that sense. You were shooting black and white. You had to look at a scene and go, is this going to look like anything if I shoot it in black and white? A lot of times it wouldn't. You didn't waste any film. Okay, good. Who's next?
All right. This is from Grace.
I recognize that street. Geary Street.
Went on my first photo walk in the Tenderloin of San Francisco and saw this couple in Lightroom. I did some exploring of desaturating the background a bit to help highlight the couple.
Yeah, I see that. I've done that with only one photograph of this Citroen in Paris. I desaturated the background. It's a technique I've seen. Some people use it way too much. All these techniques are like, to me, it's like seasoning in cooking. Chili flakes can be good in moderation, but don't put chili flakes on everything, especially on your pancakes or cereal, although maybe, hey, could work. So my only thing compositionally, the background is competing with the subjects quite a bit. So you could deal with that two different ways. One, shallower depth of field, because you have a pretty wide depth of field. I can see the cars in focus. So I would narrow that depth of field. I'd probably shoot them at 2.8. You could do that in Lightroom also. You could mask them and make a shallower depth of field. But the other thing I would recommend is move this way. So when you shoot them, move over to your left. When you shoot them, they wouldn't be competing with that background. There'd be the sidewalk. So you're leaving your subject more plainly in view. I would prefer that. You do have some cool things. You got their feet, raised, which shows motion there. Yeah. And I like where you're going with this. Just move over to your left. You have to move fast, but you've got a little time. Move fast over to your left and get a shot against the sidewalk, so you're not competing with all that background stuff. And then if you couldn't get that, you could try, a shallower depth of field. All that stuff has to happen really fast. When I talk about visualization, I'm not thinking you're sitting around and, smoking a pipe, waiting for this thing to come out of your mind. I'm talking about something that's just like that. You go, wow, I got to move over here. Bam, that's visualization. That's a skill you want to develop, like to be really fast. But your elements are there. Those would be my suggestions to make it really move to the next level. Okay.
All right.
Who's next?
Our next one, this is from Patrick, and he titled it Love.
There you go. It works. And, that's a shot that's always going to work, right? My daughter got married on the beach in Carmel, and she has that shot. And if you're anywhere near the beach, you should get that shot. It's a classic. It will always work. Bambi Cantrell uses it. Wedding photographers use it because it just gives you, the perfect match of the couple and the ocean and the clouds. It's always going to work. It's just, you're never going to lose on this shot. I would also make this depth of field a little shallower, just because that wave is a little bit in focus in the background there. This is a really easy fix, guys, in post. Don't be afraid to use your Lightroom or Photoshop. They've made it really easy to mask the subject, and then you can just blur the background. And there's several ways that you can do that. In Photoshop, you have more tools to work with, but in Lightroom, you can take your clarity and just move it all the way over. You can take your texture, and you can also sharpness. You can dial those all down, but you have more tools to add a blur in Photoshop. But that's my only thing. And the only other thing is I'd probably work with the clouds a little bit. I'd probably darken them. I'd play around with that a little bit just to give it a little more contrast. But you've done a really good job with just a very classic photograph that's should be in your repertoire. There's nothing wrong with that. Just have it there. You could, while you're masking, also, I would probably bring the shadows up for the couple a little bit. These are tiny adjustments, guys. This is not, just bring them up a little bit, because you notice the sand in the foreground is a little brighter. Yeah, there's some little more sun over to the left there. You could just help them along when you're doing your masking. Just bring the shadows up, play around with that a little bit, just to bring them out a little bit more. This is all post-processing. And then again, when you're shooting it, you might consider shoot it at 2.8 and just let the background really blur out. But good one. Okay. I hope these comments are helping you guys. If you don't agree with them, that's fine. I don't expect you to agree or disagree. Christopher from New York. Hey. Southern Maryland. I have a whole bunch of family in Maryland and Baltimore. There used to be a bakery called Silber's Bakery. It was a big time bakery. Please subscribe and enable the bell so you don't miss any of our new shows. Like the video and please share it and leave your comments. I love hearing from you. And remember to get out and capture your own images of life.